That's just like mine, I think. Right?
Yeah.
I bought it for the show at CCSU, so I got a copy of it.
Cool, nice. When was your show?
It was in October and November.
Okay. So
Around
you just
Halloween.
auditioned for one?
I just auditioned for A Servant of Two Masters, which is the next show, and then
Is that the spring show?
the spring show is always a musical.
Oh,
and
right,
they're doing
right.
Young Frankenstein.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Are you gonna try out for that one, or?
Probably. There's
Cool.
an old fart in there. I could probably get it.
Yeah. Okay, just to start, can you state your name and where you're from originally?
Originally, my name is Dana O'Neill. I'm originally from Maine, but I've been living in Connecticut, 25 years now. I live in East Hartford.
When did you enlist and why?
My original enlistment was on October 13th, 1971. Why? Because the Vietnam War was going on, and I really didn't want to go to Vietnam. But the reason why I joined is you can't beat them joining. What happened is they had a lottery for the draft, and they take all the birthday dates, and whoever's birthday's first, you know you're going to go.
Yeah.
And if you was number 365, you knew pretty much that you could stay in college and get a job and not have to worry about it. Well, my number was 7 out of 365. So at that point, it was my third year of college. Even then, I was at the University of Maine. I decided to join the Air Force, and I did. I went in on October 13th.
Why did you decide to join the Air Force out of all the military branches?
I did some research, and I knew some people, and it was just I didn't really want to be out at sea. I really couldn't put myself in the category of Marine, so it was just a personal choice.
Okay. So how was it adjusting to the military life at first? Any difficulties?
Not really. Not really. I think there's more adjustment issues today, particularly not going into the military, but coming back.
Okay.
But I've done it 3 times, so I was in the Air Force, I was in the Coast Guard, I was in the Navy, I served 22 years. It was pretty easy. I get on a plane and I landed in Texas, and I went to boot camp. It was at that point it was only 6 weeks long. At that time, there was no such thing as someone who was drafted into the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the Air Force, and I think still is, was never drafted. It was all volunteer.
Okay.
Not true with the Army. I don't know about the other branches, but I went to boot camp. It was pretty easy mentally. It was easy, particularly physically, compared to the other branches. And I can say that because I went to boot camp to other branches.
Mm-hmm.
It was only 6 weeks. You hear the horror stories about doing something wrong and doing push-ups.
Right.
I didn't do that. You had little pieces of paper in your pocket, and if you did something bad, you got a, quote, gig.
Okay.
But it was, I mean, boot camp is for a purpose, and that is to get everybody unified and uniforms and working as, a squadron in the Air Force is called a squadron. The one thing I didn't do that I probably should have is I didn't have a guarantee school, but I ended up being chosen for communications. And I actually, my very first assignment was in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and I was stationed at Royal Air Force Base in Mildenhall, and I ended up working not with Air Force One, but I was, whenever Air Force One, and Nixon was the president at the time, came to Europe, I was a telephone operator on Air Force One and through the communication center. And I was there 4 years. I went home and married my girlfriend from the University of Maine, and she came to Europe, and we had a little girl who's now 41, 42, and then we got out.
Wow. Okay. So you met your wife at college.
At the University of Maine.
Cool,
Yes,
okay.
yes, yeah. We've been married 42 years now.
Good news. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the boot camp training. You trained for 6 weeks. Are you able to remember your instructors? Okay.
I think everybody remembers their first boot camp or their boot camp.
Yeah.
it was I remember it was old barracks. I remember today is different. It was all men, and we could see women squadrons marching, but we were never together.
Okay.
I mean, in the evening when there was some free time, particularly at not boot camp but at tech school, there was the clubs where you could meet people outside your squad.
Right.
But boot camp you couldn't do that.
Hmm.
Boot camp is in the Air Force then, and you really can't compare it today because there's so many. I think it's like 8 or 9 weeks now. It was just really marching and doing a little bit of physical, and going to classes. That's really all it was.
Okay.
The cleaning of the barracks was monotonous. I mean, you had to fold your hankies a certain way. You couldn't have any toothpaste in the toothpaste cover. I mean, it was things that would make you think and work as a team. So.
Good. So, your first days in the service outside of the U.S., what was the first location you traveled to?
That would be Europe. That would
Europe?
be England.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did communications there?
I did communications there.
Okay.
It requires a very top secret. It's called SPECCAT, special category, which is kind of above top secret. Because, I mean, you're working with communications
Right.
during a war. It was at the end of the Vietnam War, but the war was still going on. So, even though I was in 3 services, even though I was in over 20 years, I never really saw a war. During Desert Shield, which is, I was in the Navy at the time, and I was a legalman, which in civilian terms you might refer to it as a paralegal. I did over 3,000 wills and powers of attorney, but I did it in Massachusetts on a base. I served 22 years in the Coast Guard, Air Force, and Navy, and I never ever saw a ship. Mostly because of my job. I was in JAG,
Right.
enlisted, and I did courts martial. I was in the courtroom a lot. I worked with a lot of commanders,
Mhm.
a lot of attorneys, which means I probably ended up being the only enlisted person there. And then while I was in the Coast Guard, I was a yeoman, which means secretary
Mhm.
to the assistant dean of academics at the Coast Guard. So I had really wonderful assignments. And to think that I served 22 years in the military, and I'm sure this question will probably come up, how does it affect you? So, I'm going to get a degree very, very soon at Central in theater. And, I've been in over 47 stage productions. I've directed, I've done films and commercials. And I get stationed in Long Beach, California, very close to Los Angeles, and New York, and London. So I was able to work in and around the theater in every one of those capacities.
So it kind of like set you up for life.
It did. And I mean, this job I have right here now is
That's great.
veteran military related.
Yeah.
So,
Out of all the locations you traveled, what was the location you spent the longest at?
that would be England.
How long was
that
it
was
for?
4 years. I was stationed in California about 2 years. There's very, very few that was longer than 2 years.
Yeah.
I was in Miami. I was in Texas for a while. Actually, England was the only out of continental United States that I was stationed at.
Okay, would you
I
say
had a lot of times in
England?
Connecticut.
Yeah, would you say England was like your favorite location that you traveled to?
Probably.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Because of my security clearance, I was not allowed to travel a lot. I mean, you can tell by my last name, I'm Irish. I was not allowed to go to Wales or Scotland or Ireland. They didn't want me on a plane, but I traveled all over England, and I had a good time. I've
Yeah.
been back since then and went to the other countries. But
Cool. So when you're in England, that was during the 70s, right?
right.
So what was like a typical day of life?
Again, pretty easy. I lived in the barracks. I had a room of my own, wall-to-wall company. You won't believe this is a barracks.
Mm-hmm.
I had a maid.
Awesome.
I had a maid. We're talking. My daughter was born in '74, so we're talking. This is just not the amount. It's not like being stationed on a ship full of, sleeping in a room with 20 other guys.
Right.
And it was, I could walk down the street and get on that train and go to London. I was later stationed at the embassy in London for a while, off the base. And that's probably why I was there for longer than normal, because everybody considered 2 assignments.
Cool.
I think I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. I have to ask this. I'm a big fan of the Beatles. Did you ever walk across Abbey Road?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I have to do that someday.
I think the biggest surprise when I was in England, I went to Sherwood Forest, and you can count the trees in it. There's no, I mean, if you look at the houses in England, they're not made of wood because there's no wood there.
Yeah.
There's no forest. It's very, very, very small. One of my favorite places, which is almost across the street from William Shakespeare's birthplace, in this Stonehenge. And I do have a fascination of crop circles. There's a lot of crop circles in
cool.
England. Yeah.
How'd that start?
The fascination?
Yeah.
That's a long, long story.
Okay.
Many years ago, I had a near-death experience,
Okay.
and the supernatural stuff is really
Hmm.
interesting to me. So
Definitely
we'll leave
is,
it at
yeah.
that. That's
Yeah,
another time.
For another video. So you must have made like a lot of close friendships while in the service, right?
In all three services.
Yeah.
Yes. And yes, I do have friends. I still communicate with. Got a Christmas card today from Jim Crandall, who was from Colorado, that I worked with at
Cool.
Royal Air Force Base in Milton Hall.
Good.
But yes, yeah.
So you must have made like a lot of friends.
I have a lot of military friends. I mean, more here at the colleges now. All these young guys and gals are coming back from war, and
Very good.
it's a good camaraderie. Always has been.
Yeah. How would you guys like entertain yourselves if you had free time?
The club.
Yeah.
In England, we at the club on the base they have slot machines. Okay, this is another thing. But I am telling the truth.
Mhm.
But in England, way back then, I'm talking 1971, 74. They used to have strip shows at the club.
Mhm.
Once a month, have steak dinner. There was a movie.
Steak dinner.
Steak dinner.
Very good.
They had a movie theater on base. I did theater shows on the base. I was a winner of Best Actor for USAFI, was the United States Air Forces in Europe, and England competed with Germany and
Mhm.
other American bases across Europe. So that's one thing I really did was theater there.
Any like humorous or like unusual events? Just like instantly come to your minds
Oh,
out of all
gosh.
your years.
I remember some very distinct, unusual courts martials that I've
Okay.
attended. I suppose I can tell you one. While I was in California, we lived in military housing. So everybody that worked, this was at the Federal Building in Long Beach, California, and everybody that worked there really was in military housing. So we knew our neighbors and we worked with our neighbors. We had one guy who just went AWOL. He just didn't go to work. And he would be home all day. And it was, you're going to be in trouble one of these days. And I was the guy who did the courts martial. So when the time, it was about a month and a half he was gone, and they went and got him and they put him in a brig, and they had, during the courts martial, someone finally asked him why he didn't show up to work. And he said, well, the day I left, if you remember right, because he gave the day, we had a military inspection. That's when you line up in your uniform. He says, the commander came to me and looked at my uniform. He says, sailor, you're not in ship-shape. Go home and get ship-shape. Don't come back until you do. He says, I couldn't get the uniform ordered, so he said, don't come back until it is, and I didn't come back. So, but he still got court-martialed anyway. That's it.
Okay. Was it easy or difficult staying in touch with your family?
Extremely easy because my family was with me.
Right.
Before I was married, unlike today when you got a cell phone, you pick up the phone, even though you're in Europe, you can call them. That never happened. So there was the snail mail.
You just have to wait for Dana.
And then
Or actually, you know what?
there was, if you made a phone call, you had to go through the communications squadron, which I worked at. But it would be extremely expensive. For like a 5-minute call, it might cost you $50. $50 was a lot of money back then. So it's very hard to communicate. The answer is yes on that one.
Yeah.
But once I got married, I met my family there. It was easy.
Okay, good. You mentioned that steak. So what was like the usual food like provided by
Food
the
was
Army.
always good
Yeah.
in the Air Force and in all the branches. There's not only, there's a lot of it. I remember having KP with in boot camp on Thanksgiving. That was probably one of the hardest days to have KP, but
Okay.
the meals there are extraordinary. They're like restaurants, and even like on campus today, if you are a vegetarian or you don't eat meat, or if you want a lot of meat, whatever you want is usually always available. And,
Good.
And they're even open in the evening for the night shift, so you can eat anytime you want to.
Mhm.
I'm sure that was not true in World War I and II. But
Yeah, great. So when was your last day in service? Or
I don't
year?
remember.
Okay.
I remember it was October 13th, 1975,
Okay.
for the Air Force because it was exactly 4 years.
Do you remember like?
My last duty was with the Navy, and I was at the Navy base at Groton.
Okay.
And I pulled the duty, and that I had served 22 years, and I was on the party and left.
Yeah.
But it was just not an ordinary day.
It was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what'd you do in the days and weeks afterwards? You know, coming home. Just.
Tried to find a job.
Yeah.
When I left California and I landed in Connecticut, I landed a job the same day, the day after at a big law firm here in Hartford, called Day Barrett Howard.
Mhm.
And I've worked for law firms, entertainment law firms in New York since then. I worked for a lot of law firms, and I mean, I was a legal man, so. And I already had a degree in business, so all I'm saying is that if you ever join the military, get a career that you can use in civilian life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still using it today. And also, as an example, I went to legal school, court reporting school, in the military, and those all count as credit hours towards this, what I refer to as a civilian degree. So.
What was it like returning to your home, or just to the U.S. in general?
I'm thinking of my comrades. Today is very, very difficult because of things that go on in war. Mine was just simple. I mean, I had 30 days a year for what they call leave, which is vacation, to be able to come home, even in Europe, because you could take what they call military hops and travel for free, at least get you across the ocean, and come home for the holidays if I wanted. I think I came back 3 times when I was in Europe during the 4 years,
Mhm.
2 to visit and 1 to get married. It was pretty easy. I think probably the most difficult thing for me is I grew up in a big, big home that my father built.
Mhm.
My father died very young. My father died at 29. He got buried alive accidentally at road construction. And it happened, unfortunately, on my 3rd birthday, because I didn't know him. But anyway, getting back on track, my mom had sold the home while I was at boot camp the first time, so when I came home, the home was different.
Oh man.
But I'm sure that's nothing compared to what the soldiers and the Marines go through today.
Right. Yeah. If you had the choice, would you do it all over again, joining the Army?
Today, I would do it. I would go back in the Air Force in a second if I could.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the benefits that the veterans get today it's just incomprehensible. I only work 15 hours a week, and I really don't have to. Being retired and Social Security, and I'm not 70, but I'm getting up there in years. I'm past 65, so.
You look good.
I would recommend, even today, anyone to join the military,
Mhm.
particularly male. Maybe that's prejudice to say, but no, for both sexes, simply because it's the benefits are just so fantastic compared to what's going on with Social Security today, and people losing benefits, and it's so much easier. It's easier for gays. It's easier for the medical. I still use medical with.
Bye, have a good
with,
weekend. Are you back
yeah.
here next week?
It's just, I don't know what I would do
I'll be
without
here
it.
Tuesday.
I'm so glad that I.
Oh, so I'll
that I
see you
did.
Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Going back to one of the original questions of why I joined the military, as I told you, my dad was deceased,
Mhm.
and he had served in World War II for, I think, just like 2 years, maybe a year and a half. A true, regular enlistment. Came home and died. But my mother got veterans benefits, financial, and she never worked. I lived in out in the country in Maine. If it hadn't been for my father's service, I would have had nothing when my mother was. So I always had told myself, as a youth, that someday I would serve, just in case something happened to me and I got married. And I'm very glad I did.
Good. Kind of stole my thunder with the last question. I was going to ask, how did the military service shape you as a person today? But you already answered that. It's really mostly anything. You think I'm leaving anything out, or anything that you feel like you'd like to share?
Military is not a bad thing. I think, in conclusion, that I would recommend it for anybody who wants to. There is this is me talking, not the government. I think people love the military or hate it. I don't think you can like the military. Either you're a comrade and you're ready to put on the combat boots and go to work, or not. My advice is, if you have an enlistment, fulfill the enlistment and get the heck out, or stay for 20. Don't do any of these 6 years and 8 years and 5 years and 20 years. 20 years is fine, but do one enlistment or retire. And get a position that you can transfer into your civilian capacity. So that's it in a nutshell. I love the military.
Yeah.